Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today we're looking at some of the last tweets that came in on September 15th, 2018, and then we're moving into the 16th. And of course, these are the Trump tweet decodes. Thomas, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Thomas. I love Trump tweets, and I love decoding them because it's amazing to try to figure out a stable genius.
That's right. It takes one to know one. Okay, so let's get started. First one, while our poll numbers are good with the economy being the best ever, if it weren't for the rigged Russian witch hunt, they would be 25 points higher. Highly conflicted Bob Mueller and the 17 angry Democrats are using this phony issue to hurt us in the midterms. No collusion.
Except for the collusion of the entire Obama weaponized administration against him during the election. There was some collusion for you. Now, what is really great here is that even when all the money in the world, literally endless money, endless people, were weaponized against Trump, he still got elected. And now that the coup still goes on, that since he's elected, this is literally a coup d'etat, he still is resisting. And look, he's winning. And all of his numbers are up in all that matters. Real life matters, not political one-upmanship, political maneuvering of fake justice. No. What we're talking about is the polls are always fake. Remember, we saw that in the election. So you have to give 10, 20 points for Trump on any poll you get. So he's already at a point that would make him higher than any president in history. And that will be shown in the next election because of all that's being done. I've even heard people referring to Optech, which we busted that story wide open and showed that every single voting machine in America that's digitized is controlled by one software program that was created by the rogue CIA, Lord Malik Brown, and good old Jimmy Carter, who's out there on the campaign trail now, hammering Trump and MAGA. Isn't that beautiful? This is the guy who, with BCCI, which remember that Comey and Mueller were both involved in the exoneration of BCCI and their donations, their illegal donations from a Pakistani bank to Jimmy Carter. So this kind of politicalization that's going on with Baby Bush getting out there and sticking his foot in his mouth every time he opens it, it's just beautiful.
It tells me that they are running scared. Did you see Obama the other day and a couple of speeches he had? There must have been a couple of dozen people in the audience. You couldn't see them, but they had to do these really close shots so it would seem like a crowd.
It was pathetic. As you showed it, queued that up and showed it to us, the conclave, we were just amazed at how gray his hair is, how his phrases, how he doesn't have a good speechwriter anymore, how everything is bland, and when you hear it now, after you know the crimes that he's committed, which we weren't allowed to say out loud because he was a supposed black president in the White House, no, we now get to say it. And we know he was an Indonesian faker named Barry Soetoro, who was in fact working for the Muslim Brotherhood and against it at the same time, bombing 8 countries with more bombs than any president has ever dropped, and still gets the Nobel Peace Prize. This shows us that the fake polls, the fake news, is just incredible. And what's happening with the midterm, they've pulled out all the stops. They're trying every October surprise they can too early. And again, they blow it. I mean, it's kind of like Dianne Feinstein's recent move of bringing the secret letter into the committee hearing and just holding it in her hand the whole time because it was the thing that was going to bring down Kavanaugh. And then we find out what it is. And of course, they leak it slowly so you don't really get the big impact. But when you finally find out the facts, it didn't happen. And the person who's saying this is undoubtedly another person being paid by David Brock and Media Matters. And Dianne Feinstein, the Chinese spy lord inside of the Congress, is, and we'll go back to what China's doing with those observatories soon.
Good, I was going to ask.
But with Dianne Feinstein, this is the same kind of thing. Instead of an October surprise, she pulls out a little bit too early. What it was supposed to do is give just the questionable doubt in the mind of those who need an excuse not to vote for Kavanaugh.
Yeah, because
not real facts.
Now, the reason they're all worried about this, Thomas, is because of this executive order that was just signed that Lindsey Graham had with Kavanaugh, asking him about military tribunals.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and so now they have to have a huge distraction because they get to derail Kavanaugh more so now than ever, because he has clearly stated that these types of crimes could be in front of military tribunal type courts.
Oh, it makes them shake in their boots. But you see, Bob Mueller, who's been acting with impunity because they can't go after him because he's, so high up as such a highly ethical lawyer, a top law enforcement person in America, he sued Trump over some golf resort dues. Okay? He can't even be involved in this. That's why it's illegal. And that's why he always calls him Conflicted Bob Mueller, because he's completely conflicted. He is nothing more than an American replica of Nazism, basically, the SS in America. And his 17 angry Democrats, they might as well be wearing swastikas. Now, the phony issues, we all know that they're phony, but you still see them as headlines. That's just, how many people are they going to insult as they approach the midterms and they put on more and more pressure from all directions? Michael Moore comes out and says 2020 may never come.
Well, first of all, who cares what Michael Moore says? But the reason you're talking about it is because some place that you're going puts that as a headline. They actually think that what Michael Moore thinks is headline worthy. I want to move on to the next tweets, may I?
Please.
Okay. When will Republican leadership learn that they are being played like a fiddle by the Democrats on border security and building the wall? Without borders, we don't have a country. With open borders, which the Democrats want, we have nothing but crime. Finish the wall.
If you want open borders, I think you should be locked up, because the law says that we cannot allow that. Not to mention that we see as the result of it, I used to say once a week, like almost every single day, we see tons of drugs being caught at the border. We see people being killed, people being beheaded, mass graves, politicians being shot. There's a war on our border. And what's really funny is Trump is pointing out that the uniparty is playing off each other to make sure that neither one of them really gets a border or a wall or security or stops the crime or stops illegal aliens in our country being caught and released.
Well, let's just roll right over that uniparty.
Well, that's exactly what he's doing. He's basically pointing out that they are. And then the other thing that's really interesting is that Trump is playing them. You see, we told you a long time ago, because we simply watch and listen, Trump has already restored hundreds of miles of the wall. He used state funds. He used other funds. He used a national security emergency issue where he used a national security issue of basically the war on our southern border with Mexico. And he then simply started building the wall. So you can now see, even on today's Truth News headlines, a video of incredible amounts of this already built. Folks, we told you Trump trumped them a long time ago. He trumped them with the omnibus bill. They don't even understand. They think that they're hurrying through with the appropriations. They don't understand. I'm not even going to explain it again. But Trump trumped them with that. He trumped them with the 2-year agreement on the NDAA, which took propaganda out of the NDAA so we can no longer be propagandized or surveilled. Trump is trumping all over the place. Now, what we need to remember is he can't tell this truth himself to people. If he said, the last time we reported it was 586 miles of new wall and an amazing amount of walls that were restored, that were added to, that were refurbished, revamped, and so on and so forth. So when it comes down to it, he's going to have his wall, and people may not even realize it until it's finished, even though the Democrats and the Republicans are fighting and thinking that what they do in Congress and in the Senate actually matters, when in fact we know the truth of the matter, that most of the good things that go to the Congress or to the Senate are simply met with obstructionists and resistance from both parties, the uniparty. And that's what he's really pointing out here. And he will get his border, and he will finish the wall. Notice he says finish the wall. He doesn't say start the wall. He says finish the wall.
Next tweet 5 deaths have been recorded thus far with regard to Hurricane Florence. Deepest sympathies and warmth go out to the families and friends of the victims. May God be with them. Now that was September 15th at 5:42 p.m. A day later, I have seen reports that counts higher, but again, I think we're going to have to wait and see because the media wants to rush out and make it a lot more deadly than perhaps it is.
Yes, some of the reports say 15 have died, but the reports now from the Democratic Party are that 3,000 died in Puerto Rico. Of course, many of them died beforehand when Puerto Rico went bankrupt and when 70 to 75% of the entire island's electricity was out and people were dying en masse. And then they were hit with a hurricane, and yes, some people died. Why? Because they didn't have services to begin with, and the corrupt politicians literally sat on some of the supplies that were sent there. But overall, what was being looked at as a 100% disaster, where people were saying everyone is going to have to move off that island and we'll have to start over again, it has actually been restored. And some of the corrupt politicians have now been arrested and found that they stole huge amounts of money, stole supplies, made sure that they got destroyed or not sent out to people, and literally they were the ones who were killing their own people. So how they blame that on Trump now during a hurricane when he's being the most sensitive and reactive president to emergencies that we've ever had, as all the agencies say, since he's become the president, every one of them has said, no president before him has ever done this. And think back to the time when you couldn't get Barack Obama to even pay attention to national emergencies or people getting killed or people being murdered, or he was killing people right and left. He was sending soldiers to their death every day. He never said anything to anybody about that. He never gave his condolences to anybody. He was a ruthless serial killer who enjoyed bombing people from a distance because he's a coward. And he never really faced anything front on. And eventually we're going to see he has no legacy except the legacy of lawlessness and criminal activity, much like the Chicago mob.
If you're watching this, listening to this audio on YouTube, remember that if you go into the description box and click on the link, you're going to find all the tweets there and plus any of the articles that we refer to so that you can continue to be educated and enlightened.
Trump does have a magic wand. Oh, sorry. And when they play these old clips from Obama or Hillary or any of them, Clinton, Bush, it doesn't matter. Play the clips. It shows the truth. Now, if you showed that to a diehard leftist socialist Democrat, which they're all basically, if you voted for Hillary or Bernie, you're a socialist. You're not a Democrat. Okay? So if we play that along with 1,000 other proofs of the lies of the left and the truth of Donald Trump, and then let them play any lies that Donald Trump supposedly said right after that, give him, equal time, guess what? Nothing will change. So there was a brilliant article you had on Truth News Headlines today, which basically said, folks, just love them, but don't try to convince them, because you can't.
So, well, it's deeper than that. It's the use of psychology, especially in our education system, to promote your philosophy, your political philosophy. So that's what this brainwashing is.
Well, it absolutely is. Absolutely brainwashing. And that now Obama comes out and says the opposite of what he said before, that he carries on like a fool, carrying on. How about climate change? I mean, really? Really? Climate change? You still believe in global warming? Oh, no, that's right. That had to be put aside because the globe's not warming. Then it became climate change. But before global warming, it was called global freezing. We were going to enter into a mini ice age in the version of the scientists before that. And then Al Gore comes along and invents carbon footprints and carbon credits, which was to be basically a new international currency that would run through his pockets. Now, anyone who believes in that nonsense now simply hasn't done their homework. Since Trump has come to power, all of the federal agencies that were giving out money to universities to do climate research, that money no longer goes there, and therefore none of the statistics are coinciding. They've proven that all the statistics that Al Gore was using are all fake. So if you really want to believe in the things that the Democrats will call them, or I like to call them demon rats, are telling you, well, pinch yourself and wake up and do a little homework, because there is no such thing and never was such a thing as humans with carbon emissions creating global warming. That is complete nonsense.
Okay, the next tweet. The illegal Mueller witch hunt continues in search of a crime. There was never collusion with Russia except by the Clinton campaign. So the 17 angry Democrats are looking at anything they can find. Very unfair and bad for the country. Also, not allowed under the law. Oh my gosh. Since when did... I want to tell you, Thomas, if you could stand in a circle... You could put your friend there. Hillary Clinton could pull out a gun and shoot you between the eyes. And your 20 friends could all be from the FBI. And nothing would happen. That woman would walk. And why is that? Because she holds the keys to the prison.
She holds the crypto keys to every... Well, to the FBI, to the NSA, to the everything. So they all go back to a company called Entrust, which is given a charter to do this by the federal government. And so, yeah, that's how she gets out of everything. We've finally proven this, and I guess that video with Michael McKibben and myself, where the research about the crypto keys and Entrust, this company, and the Federal Bridge Certification Authority, we finally figured that out. Yeah, it all goes back to Clinton in 1993 when she got basically the patents to take over all these things. As we look at this tweet, the word illegal is at the front of it, and the word not allowed under the law. In other words, lawlessness. That's what the witch hunt is. It is an inquisition. Now, going back in history, some inquisitors got the tables turned on them, and they were tortured. And that's probably going to be what happens to Mueller. As we said, the longer he sticks with this, the more his guilt comes to the surface. Now, the Clinton campaign was not only a conspiracy to collude, because there is no such thing. It was real collusion, and it was real corruption, and real payments of real Russians, Oleg Deripaska and many others, paying Hillary Clinton directly through the Democratic National Committee, and George Soros giving too much money, not allowed, filtering through all the states into the Victory Fund for Hillary. $84 million from the state of Maine, all cheated, all federal crimes. Federal Election Commission should be after her. There have been charges made and nothing happens. What happens? The DNC turns around and brings a lawsuit against everyone, including the missing Joseph Mifsud and Donald Trump and everybody who they don't like. And yet that one gets some traction. But we get no traction on the fact that there is a case right now before one of John Podesta's best friends, Judge Leon, about Fusion GPS breaking federal election commission rules in terms of federal election campaign donations. And what's going on with that one? Nothing. What went on with Imran Awan and Judge Chutkan, who was the other judge, was taken out. She was thrown in, and the person who tried the case gave complete immunity for all insinuative crimes that anyone ever threw at Imran Awan. We get Jeff Sessions, representative from the Department of Justice, who comes over just for the trial and overrides the fresh lawyer that he put from the Department of Justice to go after Imran Awan. Doesn't even speak during the trial. This is what we see. This is the corruption that we see. So when we're talking about Mueller's witch hunt, what we need to remember is he's looking for a crime. There was no crime. And there is no such thing as conspiracy to commit collusion, especially with Russians. We went into this before too many times. So when you create a grand jury, you can indict anything. And that's what Mueller is doing. He's indicting anything. And that's called, in the old days, a star chamber. In other words, in the old days, there's only like 2 countries in the whole world that still allow grand jury impanelments. Because why? They're cheating. They're illegal. They're awful. As he calls it, illegal, the special counsel, but the grand jury that they're using to manipulate all of this
it's their own court system. This federal court system, which we're going to be exposing more later in future articles and citizen intelligence reports, is an aberration of what it's supposed to be.
And what he insinuates by very unfair and bad for the country? National security issue. That's right, folks. Mueller's investigation could be turned into an issue after he turns in his stupid report and his ridiculous indictments of people who have nothing to do with the crime he's looking for, a conspiracy to collude between the Trump campaign and Russia, which didn't happen. There is absolutely nothing. They've tried. They tried to pin it on people. They tried to frame people. They tried to lie. They tried to cheat. They tried the dossier. They tried the manipulation, the October surprise, everything. You know what it was really about? What they were doing with Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee in interfering in our election was actually more about the Democrats, the demon rats, who have vested interest in Ukraine. Yes, folks, it's about Ukraine. Remember what happened? When Vladimir Putin directly interfered in our elections and Obama had proof, he came out and told everybody, for once he was going to get a pair, and he was going to take down Putin with an all-out cyber attack. Remember that? The next day, Russia announced that they laughed at us.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Nothing happened. That was Obama's... So then what did he do the next day? Put sanctions on Russia. What kind of sanctions? Sanctions that would make Joe Biden's son make a lot of money in that Ukrainian gas board that he's on.
That's Hunter Biden.
Yeah. And it would make John Kerry's son, that would be Heinz, what's his name? The Heinz...
Well, whatever. Somebody, y'all put his name in there. Go on.
John Kerry's son, somebody Heinz.
I don't know.
Anyway, the point is, it made them a lot of money when Putin had sanctions put on him that affected Ukraine and the Ukrainian pipelines and the Nord Stream 1. It created such a stir that, here's Putin saying, what did I do? I didn't do anything. And you just screwed up the entire political balance that is based upon oil in Europe? Yes, that's what Obama did, to prove that he was a big, powerful president. The last minute, his last command was to bomb Yemen. Just months later, he condemned the Trump administration for bombing Yemen. I mean, this man, the double standard is so amazing. So what we see here is their last-ditch attempts. They worked with Ukraine. They worked with every spurious nation to attack Trump. And I say spurious as in Britain, Canada, Australia. That's right. 3 of the 5 eyes need to have their eyes poked out. New Zealand, well, every once in a while we manipulate them. So what's really going on here?
Sorry, Helen.
Yeah, sorry, y'all. We love New Zealand, but you are part of the Five Eyes, and every once in a while,
they're governments, not the good people of New Zealand.
When I say the Brits, I don't mean the British people. But don't get me started.
It's us against the globalists that just want. Along with Hillary and these digital keys that she holds, they literally think they're rulers of the planet, and we're in their prison.
Mayor Khan of London has now come out and demanded that there be a second vote for Brexit, because there's too much killing and violence. So he's letting the attack of the Muslims, the radical Islamic fascists in his country that are stabbing so many people that they are now outlawing knives. Not even going to be able to make or sell knives in Britain anymore, because it's too much of a temptation for radical Islamic terrorists to grab them and to murder innocent people on the street. So what does Mayor Khan say? He agrees with George Soros. Throw out that old Brexit vote. Let's vote again and stay in the European Union. Because why? Then they can take orders directly from George Soros, and Mayor Khan won't have to,
Well, he's a mayor of London. He's not like the Queen, she's up to her eyeballs in corruption, especially with what she and the Privy Council did with our elections here in the United States. And imagine what they continue to do. But, that new executive order that Trump just signed, that calls out this criminal operation.
Oh, it calls out that the 2 national emergency executive orders that he signed put into play all 13 of the prior executive orders that Obama created that made the president able to lay upon America worse than martial law. So he has that power now, whether they like it or not. When he's playing games with them, if he wants to build a border right now,
if the
he can take it from any budget line he wants because there's a national emergency.
Look, if the Queen and the Privy Council meddle in our elections again in any way, if they've got their hands on Optech or any of that software in our election machines and they rig it, it looks to me like we can just put sanctions on the United Kingdom.
Oh, yes. Now, let me just go into that for a moment. The recent meeting what we see at Google and Facebook that has become revealed now is that they are so far left and they were so for Hillary that it was their policy. That means everything they did, and that is everything, all their algorithms, everything, all their advertisement, all the way that they posted news, is a donation to the Democratic Party, and now we see the largest election fraud and election campaign funding fraud in U.S. history. And so we see the FTC, it's rumored that they are going after them, antitrust, monopoly,
and
racketeering.
Will they go to the individuals like Sergey Brin up there, talking about the way trash-talking Trump right after the election and what they were going to, Google and what they were supposed to do for Hillary. Can he personally be held responsible?
Nope. But what can happen is, once we collapse these corporations, we can create new rules that do not exonerate corporate leaders from the crimes that they commit, as you just pointed out. That is subversion and treason. But because he can hide behind a corporation, especially one that's a monopoly, but he doesn't get charged, and none of them will. There's never any charges for anybody in a corporation.
Well, they think they're above the American law.
I mean, once in a while there are, but when it is, it's usually they give up an underling, and it's because it's just an offering to the gods of economic warfare. Really going on now is that we can see that the monopoly and the racketeering is clear because of what we have revealed with Americans for Innovation and Michael McKibben and his friends, that Avid and ISIS management are in a monopoly for antitrust that affects national security. When you use the media with known lies, and it's a conspiracy, and you're colluding, and it's corrupt, it is illegal. And that is what's coming out. And so Trump has used I told everyone, the moment that he uses the antitrust word, it's going to all explode. And in that private conversation where he said, this is off the record, and he used the word antitrust, it was revealed. And what happened? It's exploding. We have executives from these companies refusing to come to testify. Well, then that means they're guilty. So now it is showing that the Congress and the Senate is so stacked and that their lobby is, the lobbyists that control them, it's so evident now that we're calling all these people out. So it's a beautiful thing that's happening. So folks, you should be, your heart should be jumping for joy with what you're seeing in the news. And don't be confused by the craziness that you hear from the far left, because their stories are so exaggerated they can't be believed, and they're losing faith with everyone, even their own base, unless their base are either illegal, and they're even losing that, illegal aliens, as well as the fascists and the socialists. That they have them, but they don't have even the moderate Democrats anymore.
Now, the next two tweets is about Maria Bartiromo's show. Trump tweets out that it's mandatory to watch this evening, the rebroadcast at 6 p.m., but I do have a video clip of that inside the link. And then Devin Nunes is on there, and he says, quote, "I think full transparency is in order here," close quote. So what do you have to say to Mr. Nunes?
I say, Noonan, you are our hero. You are a true patriot. They are going after him and his family right now because, of course, he's in California with the Chinese espionage operative Dianne Feinstein and I guess, I don't even know a name for Nancy Pelosi. And, Maxine Waters. I mean, think of it. I mean, is there really a name for a person like that? But anyway, he's in that state, and he's one of the good people that's there. And that state may actually turn to the Republicans this time, and because of the corruption that is being seen. What's happening to Dianne Feinstein and her recent actions of bringing this letter into the Kavanaugh hearing? What happened to her when she revealed the behind closed doors testimony of Glenn Simpson's and Fusion GPS, so that the narrative could be placed out there so all the other liars could latch on to that as their narrative? Then she quit.
And what
Didn't
does she
she?
have to say about Daniel Jones? And who is the other person? Is Henry Kerner out of her office too?
That Henry Kerner worked directly with Daniel Jones, and of course you're speaking of James Wolfe, who gave the FISA top secret information for years to Ali Watkins. I mean, the corruption is absolutely astounding. So what he's pointing out, Devin Nunes has been attacked by these good Californians, but he's still standing his ground and he's not going to stop. And what he's demanding right now is that that Trump reveals 21 pages of the FISA warrant, and later, and in these talks with Maria, he says, and whatever else he wants to reveal of that, reveal it all. Because why? He says that in just those 21 pages, that even Democrats, those demon rats, are going to literally be shocked. I mean, they will be taken aback. They will not recover from the amount of corruption that is in those 21 pages. And he said the way that the Trump campaign is referred to, or the actions that were being taken, or the bias in what was being said. Not to mention the fact that we told you from the beginning there was no hearing in the FISA court for those FISA warrants. We told you that from the beginning. Those were Comey FBI fake FISA warrants that he needed to cover his insurance policy. Just like Dianne Feinstein brought that letter into Kavanaugh hearing, that was her insurance policy. They say, why didn't she reveal it till now when she's had it since the summertime? It's the insurance policy. It's the October surprise. It's the thing you do at the end so that when it's proven false, it's beyond the time that it matters.
Well, let me ask you something. We could have an October surprise, couldn't we?
We produce October surprises
right?
all the time.
Right. I mean, well, Trump laid down that executive order, which was a nice September surprise. But if you were planning this out, Thomas, what would you offer as an October surprise to make sure that the Democrat National Party experiences an extinction level event?
Well, I would indict Hillary Clinton for any one of her thousands of crimes.
Who's going to do it? Jeff Sessions isn't going to do that.
No. And she may even have sanctions put on her at this moment.
It's got to be something that you can do this October. What would you do? Unredact?
I would show the collusion, corruption, and illegality between George Soros and the Democratic National Committee, showing that John Podesta and Hillary Clinton were 1,000% guilty, and that George Soros is guilty. And that's what I would do. I'd make sure to take down the largest donor and the corrupt rat lines that still to this day run the Democratic National Committee. And I would show then the streams of funds that have flowed to all kinds of candidates through...
That's not guttural enough. Remember, you're having to reach...
I mean, Mitt Romney would go down in this, John McCain.
Okay.
I'm talking about George Soros money to offshore accounts. All it would take is one simple investigation of George Soros, and we would take down... for instance, I said from the beginning that James Comey only took that job as director of the FBI. Go back, check me on this. He's being paid $10 million a year by George Soros on an offshore account. How much do you think Robert Mueller is being paid by George Soros? You see, you have to remember that these are direct payoffs. We see it all the time in the lobbyists controlling the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and many other groups. This money is institutionalized corruption. But that's the surface of the iceberg. That is the tip. What's going into offshore accounts to pay off a John McCain, who got, $11 million just in the last year before his death from foreign agents, foreign governments? Okay, what's he got in his offshore accounts? You see, and is he even dead? And why did Mitt Romney come back into the scene to take his place? And did you see that beautiful, easy transition that happened right there? That's because Mitt Romney owns the voting machines in 17 states, and his son, Tag, runs them, and they all use Optech. They control elections, folks, but now Trump and his national emergency that has focused specifically using their narrative of the stupid Russian interference in our election, which even Obama said not one vote was changed. Clapper said not one vote was changed. All of them, not one vote was changed, folks.
But they could freeze Mitt Romney's all of his businesses,
yes.
His accounts. He could make him a pauper if his machines do this.
Well, if they simply went after his offshore accounts, they'd close down Mitt Romney. All those machines need to be taken away. And I've been seeing here and there in different reports that people are getting very hip to the fact that every single digital election machine in America is hackable by a junior high school student with a cell phone standing anywhere near it. So we need to go back to paper. We need to stop the rat lines of institutionalized corruption of lobbies that affect the Senate and the Congress. Put in term limits. That will all end.
Okay, well, term limits will have to wait until we win the place.
Well, yes.
Okay.
No, we'll have to wait until the
Anything more about
second year.
Nunes before we wrap it up?
Well, Nunes is also stating that all that he did in the questioning of, I think, as many as 70 people as part of this investigation he was doing, which then led to the Nunes memo, which was, remember, one of the biggest things in Trump campaign and Trump's administration so far. During his time in the White House, it was the Nunes memo. Now it's going to be the 21 pages that Nunes has focused on that are going to be redacted, plus many other things that are being redacted. He has endless pages of the people that they queried that show the evidence that has caused him to believe and know what he knows about this conspiracy. And he, when you hear him speak, says everything that we say, and we say everything that he says. Why? Because we've been following every word of it. And when you do, what has become open source knowledge paints his conspiracy in absolutely amazingly clear terms. And he is making sure that when these 21 pages are redacted, and they are being redacted, when they are declassified, and Trump is declassifying them through the proper channels so that he doesn't get in trouble, I believe it's going to be the big explosion that shows that the FBI, the DOJ, the State Department, and the CIA were 100% complicit in a fantastic conspiracy to meddle in an election against campaign Trump and for Hillary, and then against him when he was president-elect, and now against him as the sitting president in a coup d'etat. It is going to reveal a current coup d'etat. It's going to reveal the FISA courts are completely corrupt, and that Comey, as an FBI director, was the most corrupt FBI director in history, and that takes a lot to get that title, and that he has to go to jail. You hear Joe DiGenova saying that with the Andrew McCabe grand jury and his lack of candor when he spoke in questions with the FBI, that particular case is revealing many things because James Baker, the previous head counsel for Comey and for the FBI, is turning state's evidence. I'm going to hold back on believing that. I would like to believe that. So if you are getting excited about that, hang on a second. That isn't the way it works. These are corrupt people in a corrupt system, and that isn't the way it works. It's going to be much different than that when it comes out.
Well, how's it going to be?
It's going to be, unfortunately, cases of treason. It will be cases of treason. And this will be unprecedented.
Well, against whom?
Against Comey initially, and then everyone involved in it.
Okay, so we are going to see treason.
And it will go right back. It will follow right back from Comey straight to Obama, yes. Now, you will not see treason charges brought against Obama. You will see impeachment charges brought against him, and they will impeach his presidency. And they can do that. It's never been done, and none of this has ever been done.
You're getting me very excited here, because that would mean that all of the things he did could get rolled back.
They would all have to be reviewed to see if there was some kind of foreign interests and or national security issues involved in each one of his decisions, yes. But remember, his library isn't even accessible to us. It's going to be like his past history and his future history. It's all hidden because he is a CIA operative exactly as George H.W. Bush was and exactly as Bill Clinton was. But Bill Clinton was a rogue CIA agent. He was never really a paid one. He was trained by George H.W. Bush. So what we're seeing here is treason charges, and it's going to have to be in an unprecedented scenario. There's never been anything like this. There will be at least 36 people, we've named them, who will be charged in this conspiracy of treason. But this is a real charge, and it is a real conspiracy because we've already seen the evidence. And now we see more Page and Strzok messages, and people can't explain why that's happening. Let me explain why that's happening.
By the way, I still haven't seen any lover texts.
No, all we've seen is him speaking to her as if she's a guy, not a lover, calling her, yeah, Page. Yeah, what do you think about that, Page?
Well, isn't it how they
no insinuation of lovers. But remember, Strzok said in his testimony that he was allowed to select the text messages between him and Page that were released through the Michael Horowitz's Inspector General investigation of politicalization between the DOJ and the FBI. Now, that's hard to believe, but those were his words, and then it was confirmed afterwards. Yes, Michael Horowitz allowed him to choose those, and they're damnable. And in some of them, Agent 1 and 5 are planning to assassinate the president. And they're agreeing, Strzok and Page. They're saying basically the same thing. They literally are making implications, not only that they're overthrowing a president, but they're trying to get rid of him in every way possible. What will have to happen in the end is that people will have to get the full story of the text messages between Andrew McCabe, Comey, James Baker. If James Baker gives up his text messages, that's the end of it. All 36 conspirators are going to jail for the rest of their life. And he is
but
just
who's going to
skip
them?
away.
Who's going to try them? The courts are extremely crooked.
That's the point.
Is
That's
it
why
gonna
if
be
you
military?
believe that James Baker is being a stool pigeon in this case against Andrew McCabe, I would say you better hold your speculation on that, because I'm not so sure that that's true. I'd like to believe it's true. So, Michael Horowitz must have released more of the Page-Strzok messages that were related to leaks. Remember, he is conducting 7 investigations. 6 of them are still underway. One of them was the politicalization of the DOJ and the FBI, and there was only one insinuation that someone did anything wrong, and that was Andrew McCabe, and that was for not having candor, in other words, lying to the FBI under certain questions, not for leaks. So now these things come out, and this is ironclad proof that leaks were institutionalized, and it named who. And those people that it named are getting lawyers right now. So how did those get released? Only thing I can imagine is somehow Michael Horowitz released them as part of the investigation on the leaks. But remember, so far, there was one leaker, and that was James Wolfe and Ali Watkins, but that was a separate investigation. So why didn't Horowitz go after that person? Why didn't Horowitz go after Daniel Richman, who was literally paid by the FBI, was in a FBI position as a leaker, Comey's personal leaker to the New York Times? We know these people. We know, Devlin Barrett. We know these people had 13 FBI contacts feeding him information. They all have to go to jail, folks. They all knew that was national security because, first off, they knew it was a lie, and they knew that it was a national security problem because they were attacking a sitting president with lies. They themselves became war actors. They became domestic enemies. They became domestic civilians, citizens, and in some cases military, working with foreign powers, working against our Constitution to unseat our president. And remember, one of the worst things you can possibly do is meddle with an election. Well, they meddled with an election more so than anybody could even imagine. And then they tried to blame it on Trump. And 2 years later, $24 million of the
Special counsel
bills. Robert Mueller's an expensive guy, and his 17 angry Democrats that are with him are very, very expensive. And so, what is it, $24 million that we know of? It's probably 2-3 times that. And what do we got? Nothing. We have Rat Rodenstein saying that Trump is not guilty. He's not even being considered to be guilty. There is no conspiracy for collusion. There's no connection between Trump's team and Russia or Vladimir Putin. So why does it go on? We want it to go on, folks, because all the rats are showing who they are.